how quickly or slowly we need to go over some introductory things. So I'll put this up as we are doing that. Looks like we have at least a couple new people, so welcome. I'll go ahead and end the poll, because if we have at least one person new, I do want to honor and share that and make sure that we go slowly enough to incorporate. Last time it was just an overview, and I'll show you how to access all the materials and the resources. In the meantime, as we're again having people come in, I thought this was a fun way to start us off, because today we're talking phonology and sounds. And so this is a fun way for me. I just think, how do you pronounce crayon? Look at how they're doing different ways around the country that we pronounce crayon. Is it more like the red was crayon, or is it crayon, or is it where it rhymes with dawn? And it says that as blue for up here, but it's kind of, no, it's more like, because your dawn is not quite my dawn from back from in New York. So there's dawn and there's dawn and dawn and dawn. Is it crayon, as in like a man, or is it crown? Like, so just a fun food for thought at how one word gets pronounced so differently across the country. All right. Other things to make sure we handle. Let's start off with a little bit of land acknowledgement. I do have a map that I can put into the chat box for those of you who would like to contribute or look up where you are. And this is just a recognition that our ESD here in the Capital Region area is on the traditional lands of the Nisqually, Cowlitz, and Puget Sound Salish people. And we do like to recognize that acknowledgement is but a first step. It does not stand in for relationship and action, but it can begin to point toward deeper possibilities for decolonizing relationships with people and with place. I'm going to grab the attendance link again for people who've come in after the last time I posted it. And we also recognize and acknowledge the pain and trauma from over 400 years of racism in the United States, and pledge to stand with our communities of color, especially those who identify as or are categorized as African American. And we also recognize and acknowledge the intersectionality of those who identify both as persons of color and as individuals with disabilities. So this is a commitment to centering our work to dismantling systemic racism and disrupting ableist structure. Toward that, I do have a link that I hope this works, because it ends in email, which is strange, it's called a teacher's tool, minimizing emotional impact on learning disabilities for students of color, or the label of having a learning disability. So I'll put that into the chat box. And anytime you see that this kind of link of a file folder, that's when I'm going to add in a resource for you. And I also, of course, welcome you to add in your own resources, because I think the strongest supports we have for each other are each other. And I always look to not only share what I have, but also learn and gain from others as well. So we have some Zoom tips. We ask that you do change your name, so it's your name and your district, so that we can see where everyone's coming from. So in the conversation, I was doing that a little bit with people who were telling me, I think it looks like we have awesome. Most people have their district. That's very helpful. Thank you. If you don't have it yet, I'm seeing a few that still need to add that on. Here's the way to access that. You just go to the participants list on your toolbar and go to your name. Next to it, you see that blue box that says more. The second option there is rename. You can also make sure that you are hiding your self view. That's a little bit more natural to not look in the mirror view. Another way to do that is to go up to your picture. Up in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a blue box with 3 white dots. You click that, and rename is an option, as is hide your self view there. And I'm not sure what all the options you have. And if anybody still sees Nina, please interrupt me and say, Nina's here. Otherwise, we'll be working on our own. Okay. Some other tips here. There's the mute button. So that's how you can unmute and say, hey, Nina's here, or I'm here. Welcome, everyone. The reactions is where you can click and you raise your virtual hand. I ask that you please use this instead of just do this, because unless you are Amanda, Carolyn, or Kelly, I can't see you. Right, unless I click the little arrow and I scroll through, which I like to do. So to say hello and hi June, hi MC Horrigan, and that my arrow is cutting off Buffy and Brenda, etc. So thank you also for putting a little bit of who you are and introductions. I'll give you the link to the Jamboard in a moment as well. And I invite you to scroll through like I do from time to time and see who else is here. That's part of the relationship building. The view options, and that's where you can make our pictures bigger or the shared screen bigger. You can make whoever you want the person talking. You have lots of options with the view. And that's also where you can find the annotations. When you click the annotate button with the little pencil, it pulls up this toolbar. And you'll see that this, the drawing and the stamping the text, that format button will change the color of what you're doing. So I mentioned, these are just the introductory things that we have to get through to make sure everybody's on the same page with us. I mentioned that little resource icon. These are some other icons I use as guideposts. So there's, and I'm trying to incorporate them more and more. If there are any missing, please just put a little something into the chat box or send me an email saying, hey, you need to add this icon to this slide because it's just something I'm working on becoming more explicit with. I find it always helps. But sometimes you get so busy and going on in your own head, you're like, I've got this. And then you forget to add those little icons. So you can see what they mean for us, handouts, activities, reflection time, practical strategies. And the strategy here is that our students with dyslexia especially, but a lot of our students with learning disabilities, and frankly, I think anyone benefits from having classroom visual cues. It gives us direction and reminders. And so I think it also helps us as teachers too, because you don't forget everything. Because it's not like none of us has anything going on, right? Okay, we're moving from that into our teaching and learning beliefs. And this is an opportunity if you'd like to practice your stamping and to highlight or put into the chat box or to stamp what stands out to you. What's an important, but we're all multitasking, I'm sure again. We understand. So an engagement opportunity, that's actually the great request that we have on the next slide. I made the colors of what stands out to me from our teaching and learning beliefs. I invite you to kind of, like I said, stamp or put something into the chat box. What drives you and what is important to you in this process? Thank you for adding on a few. I love people are talking about that growth mindset. We're always constantly learning. That active engagement. Someone says, okay, I'm multitasking, but I'm going to do what I can. That's how we learn best, is from being engaged. Yes, I'll keep adding the attendance link. Oh, that's not the attendance link. Sorry. I'll give you a moment to look at that while I go grab the attendance link. I have to go grab it from the top up above. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Love getting all the decoration. It's an engagement. And notice it's also a fairly anonymous way of engaging. What was that? All right, well, we'll come in as you need to. Thank you for contributing. I appreciate the input and the stars around the all. That's one of my most important ones too, is that all students can learn. We never give up on a student, and we keep trying to find, how can I help? How can I make sure that we get what we need to be successful? All right, I'm going to give you just a moment. Looks like everyone has stopped. I'll go ahead and clear that off and invite you to do the same here. But this is my requests, or in other words, how we can get the best out of our time together through the active engagement, using our technology, listening, not judging. So this one should actually have a heart on that, to really the refrain from judgment. But sharing that ideas, and those, maybe I should change the words on both of those, but I think that it's important that we work together and that we recognize that this is just a small bit I'm looking at the expecting and accepting non-closure. This is 2 hours which is a shortened version of a 6-hour class, which is still, there are books written about these topics. So each one, it's just an introduction, and there's no way we can get to everything we need to, but I hope that we can really get you at least some tools and some knowledge and some strategies to help make sure that we can support our students. So thank you, especially, I love everyone, someone saying so much about appreciation on that, Grace. I do. I think that we take a deep breath, we recognize that we're all on different places on our journeys, and we're all doing what we can with everything we're juggling to. No problem. Here's your attendance link again for whoever came in late. All right. Awesome. Our numbers are 71. You guys are, this is a fantastic group. And I will say that last time was so much fun for me because there was so much engagement and a lot of questions. And I don't care if we're not going in the same order as my slides are going to be. I want it to be meeting your needs and taking off into the directions that's going to be useful for you as a group. And if you need to hear it again, I offer this class again in the spring, and it's free every time. So feel free to come back. All right, I'm going to clear all those off. Share out the goals, particularly because we do have some people who are new. So throughout these 14 hours together, we are trying to deepen our understanding of explicit literacy instruction, structured literacy, how that applies to teaching emergent readers and to those who struggle. We're expanding our knowledge about those foundational elements of literacy that all kids need. Phonology, the understanding of the sounds. Orthography, how those sounds are written. Etymology, the history of the written form. Morphology, the meanings of those written forms, and morphemes are the smallest unit of meaning in a language. Syntax, how we put those words together and how they work together to create sentences, and then semantics, the understanding. We're going to work on using these strategies, gaining strategies to apply this knowledge to support our students' reading growth. So I'm going to pause here for a moment, and I'm going to put the resources in there, which it's not already, so I'm going to go grab it for you, and just kind of give people a moment to see where we've been, where we're going, and if there's anything that you'd like to unmute and chat about or question, or something that's been circling in your mind since we last met that you'd like to bring up, or either orally or put into the Jamboard. I'll grab that for us as well. So we will definitely be talking about the Jamboard when we talk about introductions on the next slide, but I first want to open up as we think about where we've been and where we're going on this outline. Here's our Jamboard. In case you would prefer to do it anonymously, which we have a parking lot on, I think it's the second slide. Nope, the second slide is where you can tell us where you're from. The third frame is our parking lot. You can see I've responded to the posts from last time. So I'm going to put this into the chat box for us. There you go. Wait, I thought I had, there we go. Oh, I do appreciate, we have a couple of things. Dawn, I haven't put the handouts link in again. So we can't get the Jamboard to work and swim. Apologies for that, Saxon. Hope that you can just add into the chat box or unmute so that we can find ways to contribute. I want to try provide options. And there was a request on the resources. I'm going to get that for you, the handouts. This is a tinyurl.com explicit literacy instruction. And let me grab that. Looks like a lot of people are already jumping in and find ways to explore all of the resources. And I will be directing us to some of them later today as well. Oh, that one didn't work. Let me try that again. Copy URL. That way it's clickable for you. There you go. All right. No one that wants to jump in at this point in time? Well, I hope that you will have a chance later, especially when we get into small groups. And we want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to process orally. Let me grab the attendance book link again for those of you, anybody who missed it. Because unfortunately, when you come in late, you can't see what was in chat before you got here. So there we go. All right, so I've already given you the Jamboard link. And I'm just going to give us a moment to, you can post where you are, where you're joining us from. You can take a look in the pictures as I share. We do have some people who are new with us, so I just want to make sure that we have a little bit of background so people understand what brings me to this work and why I'm really passionate about this. So you can answer the question of why would we listen to her? As I mentioned earlier, I started my career, well, I mentioned Chartwell earlier, but I didn't explain that it was a school in California for kids it was an elementary school for kids with dyslexia and related language learning disabilities. And that's where I started my career, learning from Louisa Moats and one of her early versions of her book, Speech to Print, learning from later Anita Archer, learning from Keith Jones, learning from Diana Hanbury King. I have been so fortunate through my learning experiences, as well as my teaching experiences. I taught special education, elementary, middle, high school, and then I taught people how to become teachers. My journey, which started professionally, became personal. I have a daughter who was on an IEP. Now she's on a 504 for dyslexia. And I have a son who has an IEP for autism. So I've been on both sides of the IEP table as well now as the 504 table. So just to give you a little bit of my background. Oh, hi, Nina. Yay, thank you. Nina, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Hi, everybody. I'm Nina Andrew, and I am a support for ESD 114 around literacy. I am a 20-year teacher and lover of all things having to do with kids. And I'm just happy to be here to support Alicia today. And I'm excited to be here with you guys during this professional development. So, hi.
Thank you so much, Nina. I'm thrilled to see you here. I'm going to repost the attendance for in case the participants number changes again. And I think you have access to everything else. And if you don't, let me know and I'll help make sure. So I like to start off with a little bit of fun. It's part of the relationship building. It's also getting into the right-hand brain side or checking in. Let's just see if you can calculate how is our vocabulary? One word that describes your past week. And good is too vague. I don't think they had any really good adjectives in the Bitmoji field there. But let's see what's coming in. Just a quick check-in. How are we doing? Oh, I'm so sorry to see the words difficult. Short, yes, but not from Thursday to Thursday. But it was nice having a 3-day weekend, wasn't it? Oh, I'm seeing lots of interesting whirlwind and hectic and busy. I hope you had a good 3-day weekend, relaxing a little bit. Unexpected, productive. Oh, frustrating. I'm sorry to hear that. Overwhelming, spontaneous. I love it. So let's hopefully we'll be able to continue. Fast, I know. there's a lot going on, isn't there? Well, hopefully we'll have some more opportunity for sharing in our breakout. But before we get into phonology, I'd just like to start with a little bit of reminder of one of the things that we talked about last week. We talked about that simple view of reading being the product of, and those of you who know math better than I, correct me if I'm wrong, if it's product versus, it's not sum, it's product. It's the multiplication one. The combination of language comprehension and word recognition. And you need both of those. And if you recall from last time, we talked about the fact that if either one of those is 0, your outcome is going to be 0. And Nina, feel free to jump in if there's anything you want to add in at any point in time at any of these. So one of the things I like to stress, though, too, is that this isn't static within a student. As an individual, you could be strong or weak with your language comprehension, dependent on the passage's vocabulary and syntax. So in other words, I can sound out pretty much anything I see in front of me. Epitome is kind of hard, but I may not recognize it in that context. Or if you give me a book on protein kinases, or I'm getting better about the brain, but there are still some of those words that just don't stick in my brain on the different parts of the brains. So we all have our different strengths and our struggles. And we need to make sure that we're supporting our students on both of those areas. And when I pause, feel free to jump in. But this is the area direction as well that I want to point out, is that the progression from an emergent reader to an independent reader. So remember, the LC is the language comprehension and the WR is the word reading. And this is just another way of looking at how that progression looks like when they come to school. So you see our emergent readers, those ones on the very left, they come to school with a lot of words they know, that their language comprehension maybe is really strong. They understand what you're saying to them, but not a lot of words they can read. Maybe there are some that they've picked up through preschool, kindergarten, their parents reading to them, but probably not very many. And then you can see as we're growing, I'm going to be working on growing that word reading skills until that I could sound out anything and that my language comprehension becomes that upper limit on my reading achievement. That has been found to be the case even after my word recognition skills have been remediated in poor readers. I'm only going to be able to read as much as I can understand if someone were to read it to me. That is reading with understanding. Okay, so as we start here, one of the pieces that we're talking about today is the phonology and phonemic awareness. So these are the responses from those of you who took the survey. We do have a couple of new people here. So Nina, you have access to the slide deck, right? Can you grab the survey from last week's session? I think it's slide maybe through 3 or 4. It's pretty early on. And you could put that in the chat box for anybody who wasn't here with us last week. And anyone who was last week and who didn't join in, because we had, I think, over 80 people. And so 69 of the 75 of you, or those of you who were here, put in your comfort level and your knowledge level about phonological and phonemic awareness. And you notice we have a lot more down at the upper end, our 5 or 6 and higher, fewer on the other end, but we still have a really important range to notice here. That we have a heterogeneous group, and this is one of the areas where we need to understand a little bit more, all of us collectively, because I think that too rarely we may think we know a lot about phonological and phonemic awareness, and we get down in and say, oh, there's more to learn. So I'm going to frame it into, remember when we talked about this reading rope last time? This is the phonological awareness and where it fits into the bigger picture of reading. So just to have some reminders that I don't have on here for here, let me add here. Remember, we talked about the word recognition, and we talked about, these are the 2 areas of the simple view of reading. Actually, I do have them here. Language comprehension and word reading. I'll clear out those homemade circles. And then it's the phonological awareness piece where we're focusing today, because it's the base. It's what everything else gets built upon in this blue section. The red section comes along and we can work on this orally. The red section I'm going to be always working on. But if on the word reading piece, that's when I have to attend to phonemes. If we didn't have any written language, we wouldn't really have to care about phonemes. Who cares about the different sounds? We don't need to know that unless we're going to pronounce things correctly, of course. I can tell you, for one thing, I've seen many students with dyslexia, including my own daughter, struggling with things like animal, amule, hopsital for hospital, trying to get that right order of the phonemes. And so that's part of this understanding syllables as well as individual sounds and words, the phonemes. Thanks, Nina. So this was another reminder from last week, was the elements we need for word readings. And since we talked about this last week, I'm just going to bring it up quickly in all these pieces. And as a reminder, let's look again, that phonology is one of the 3 pieces we really need to know a word. We have to understand the words if someone said it to me orally. I have to understand what it means. That's the semantics here. And now, next time, we're going to talk about sound symbol connections to add on this written form. Let me get, no one wants read. The written form to develop my students' written vocabulary. So if you remember, this is green because this is what kids come into school with, knowing a lot of words orally and their meaning. And then we have to add on that written form. I have a slide on why phonology is important and why we pay attention to it. Can I get a volunteer to read one or two of those quotes for us while I coat my throat? Really?
Awareness of articulatory gestures facilitates the activation of graphophonemic, sorry, connections that helps children identify written words and secure them in memory.
Everyone needs to give Debbie a hand of applause for those tough words, articulatory gestures and graphophonemic connections. Some $25 words there, aren't they? I thank you for that. And I think I saw Theora volunteering as well. I'll let you take the next one, Theora. But as we talk about this, we're saying that the more whoops, I can't, let me try clearing that off and getting this straight one and stuff. Articulatory gestures, those are how I say sounds. Graphophonemic connections, that's the connection between the letter and the sound. So this is going to help secure this into my student's memory if I'm aware of how that it's made in the mouth. All right, Theora, were you unmuting too?
There is no comprehension strategy powerful enough to compensate for the fact you can't read the words.
Thank you. That's what leads us to do what we do, isn't it? We're trying to make sure our kids can actually read the words. And so when we start with the phonemes, we're going to start with making sure that they are connecting the sounds, paying attention to the sounds that are represented by the print, and being able then to remember them by paying attention to how those sounds are made. So we're going to pay attention to all of that today. Okay, so when we're talking about phonology, we're going to be talking about the pronunciation of sentences, phrases, and words. You know, from our Greek, ology means the study of, phono means sounds. But in particular, we're talking about speech sounds. And in English, we have approximately 44 speech sounds. I want to be careful. Notice I'm kind of using quotation marks for sounds because many of them are very, very slight differences that I can't really hear the difference. I think my speech pathology friends would say, oh no, and are different sounds. But can you hear them if you close your eyes, can you hear the difference between and or and it's kind of hard to hear that difference. Nina's shaking her head. So hence, these are why I call them, we're calling them phonemes, and I talk about the articulatory gesture, is that and are two very different things. If I say thin and thin, two very different words, but you might have to look at my mouth to see which one I'm talking about. So hence, while I'm calling them speech sounds, it really is a different speech gesture. It's, yes, thank you. And Saxon's talking about the fact that when I say approximately 44, it depends on where you're from. So for example, when I mentioned earlier, the aw in dawn versus, is it dawn and dawn or dawn and dawn? D-O-N versus D-A-W-N depends on where you're from. And so that there may be a stronger aw, like a daughter, and awful, than out for me, because I'm from New York, than for you, by many Washingtonians. So hence this, I'm going to put little asterisk or parentheses here, approximately 44. And we have approximately then, 19 vowels, 15 consonants. It's very complex, unlike some languages where there are only 5 different vowel sounds. Notice how I'm talking about sounds. A lot of people say, wait a minute, there are only 5 vowels. Those are letters. Vowel sounds very different. Okay, the reason why I have this pyramid here is to illustrate kind of the layers of phonology. And then, I'm going to let you watch the chat box because it seems like chats are coming in, not just important things for me, and you can let me know what's important for me. So these layers, notice we starting with a large unit of a sentence, and sentences are made up of phrases, which are made up of individual words. Each of those words can be broken down into, if it's either one or more syllable, and we'll talk about syllables in a few weeks, but the syllable is the unit of a word. A single word is a single syllable. Every word is one or more syllables. And then we come up to each syllable can then be broken up into its first sound, its onset, and everything else, its rhyme. And then each of those could be broken up into the little tiny bits, the individual sounds. And so I'm looking for my pipe cleaner. I'll have to find that during our break, because pipe cleaners are extremely useful for putting beads on. And I have them over there, I think. Putting beads on the pipe cleaners and sliding them across, thinking about the different sounds. And when I say the junctures between sounds, this is what's very hard and very important for us to pay attention to, because there's something that's called co-articulation. When I say train, it is the said so quickly that for our kids, it often sounds like ch, doesn't it? Train, a choo-choo train. So those are co-articulated, and we need to help them slow down and notice each individual sound or feel each individual sound. I had a speech language pathologist once tell my kids, pull it apart like a rubber band, stretch it. The train, train. If I took off the I'd have rain. So think about the and now train. You're pulling it apart like a rubber band. So we're slowing that down. Okay, so this is just the general overview. We're going to talk a little bit about the influences of phonological processing. And I've noticed my little kid, he's got his hands on his eyes, because I used to always say phonological work can be done with our eyes closed. I kind of want to change that, because you can, but should you? Because when we think about that that you were trying earlier, you couldn't hear the difference. You had to see the difference. So, but we are talking about that ability to process the speech sound system. We're talking about comparing sounds, manipulating them, pronouncing them, remembering them. Those are really crucial for our processes. I was looking at the chat box. I love the examples: bag, beige, a bag, perhaps. And yes, we have to really think about when you think about masks made it difficult. And this is where I would often tell teachers, record yourself. If you have to be wearing a mask, how about making a video of yourself making those sounds? And I actually do have a video in our resources. If we go to the Phonology and Phonemic Awareness link, there, of course, it's not here. I know where it is, though. There's a pronunciation chart. There are a lot of other things in here. We're going to go up. I know where that video is. I'm going to grab it for you. On my Padlet, you'll see under teaching resources a video of somebody very clearly making every sound. So I'll show you how to get that, and I'll grab the link for you. And then we're going to get into the elements of phonological processing right here under 44 phonemes, under linguistic knowledge. I'll just grab that link. Oh, how do I do that? Oh, that's not being nice, is it? Let's see, how do I do this? Seriously? Okay, well, you can all access it through I'll put this into the chat box, and maybe somebody else can figure out how to grab just that link for anybody who wants it. I thought that would be easy, and it's not. So not right now anyway. Okay, so let's get into those parts. And what are we talking about when we get into phonological processing? So phonological processing is an umbrella term that encompasses 4 really important skills. And each of these skills they show up or oftentimes are weaknesses in our students with dyslexia. The phonological awareness, the phonological memory, the phonological representation, and the phonological naming. So the phonological awareness is just paying attention and realizing you have these different elements of that speech sound system. This is the pyramid here. Recognizing that a sentence is made up of different words. And some of our kids struggle here. Think about Ramona the pest. And if you remember, one time she drew a very strange lamp. And her mom said, "What is that?" And she said, it's a Dawnzerly. And her mom said, "Huh?" She said, from the song, "Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?" She wasn't hearing the dawn's early light. She was hearing the Dawnserly light. So just like when you come home and your kids come home and you say, hey, do you have anything to eat? Could you imagine writing that for those poor kids? Did you eat yet? Or do you have anything to eat? We say it so quickly. And that becomes hard for our kids to recognize each individual word within that phrase. Did you eat yet? Jeet yet? Kind of sounds like jeet yet, doesn't it? So it's really paying attention to those individual elements. That's our first piece, is the phonological awareness. The next one, the phonological memory, is when you're able to hold on to sounds and keep them in your short-term memory. You can think about it as having an audio whiteboard in your head. And so if I asked you to blend the sounds, s, l, I, p, you have to hold all of those sounds in your memory in order to blend it together and make slip. And this is often an area that's difficult for our kids with dyslexia. And so this is their working memory for sounds, we'll call it that. All of the other reindeer, and we definitely appreciate that. Ave burrito for a while. What is that, Saxon? Yeah, Ave burrito
So it's Ave Maria. Is it supposed to be Ave Maria? But all she heard was Ave burrito. So it's the same thing.
I love that. Thank you for those great examples. And so when we're talking about the memory, we're talking about what we need in order to use for reading and spelling. So that's really crucial. The next piece, that phonological representation, this is that inner voice. So if I asked you to say the name of your mother or think about what's your mother's name, you might hear a voice in your head saying this. This is an inner voice that we use to help put things into our phonological memory. Do you remember in the electric company, I think it was, that little girl going to the store and she would repeat to herself over and over again because she might remember her mother's list. A carton of milk, a stick of butter, and what was the other one? Oh, a loaf of bread. And she said it over and over and over again. She's using her outer voice to stick it into her head. Many of us, we use our inner voice. We would just repeat that over and over again so we can remember things. And that's our phonological representation. But then the other piece is I've remembered it and now I have to retrieve it. That's my phonological naming. That's retrieving what I've remembered. And I'm using the image of a grocery store because if you know the organization of your grocery store, you can go in and pick out what you need and get out really quickly. Unfortunately, for kids with dyslexia, they are really comfortable. They may be comfortable with the organization of that grocery store. And then they go in and somebody rearranged everything and then they can't find it anymore. So it's going to take them longer to find what they're looking for. And that's what we are measuring when we do a rapid automatized naming, is we're checking on their phonological naming, which requires us to think about how did I represent it? Where did I put it? That's what I'm holding it into my memory. What was it I was doing? It takes so many different integration things that you are integrating when you're looking at a rapid automatized naming piece. But that's what I'm looking at, the phonological naming. Go ahead, Christopher, and then we're going to give you a moment on the next slide to actually talk about these with groups.
And sorry, I don't know whether it's okay to just like jump in with questions in the middle of what you're doing, because it can be a little bit like maybe not apply to everybody. But the quick thing that I'm trying to ask, so I watch this and it's like I'm trying to improve the depth of my understanding of this, and you get a sense of almost being overwhelmed because it is so exceptionally complex. And so when you're talking about kids who might be non-responders to different types of interventions, there's so many things to look at. So just like within phonological processing, here's 4 whole different sections where you could have a breakdown that you could try to pinpoint and assess. And
that's
so,
exactly the point.
yeah, and what I'm not sure about is like I'm sure somebody has, but it's like I've never, and I don't know if there's even consensus about this, but is there some type of a model or decision tree that is built that is comprehensive that a practitioner can use to it almost, if nothing else, as a sort of a schema to hang all of this on? Because for me, what the goal is that I want to be able to address this complexity, and if there's something breaking down somewhere, but there's, oh my God, there's so much that I'm just like, how do I even hang all of this information on a tree?
So Christopher, when it comes to these kind of granular, when it comes to like the elements of phonological processing, that would be something that I would really dive into with an SLP, a school, an IEP team, and hopefully our kids are not going to need us going to that granular level. But I will add you one more thing that you can contribute to your conversations, and Nina, if you're still, hopefully you're still with us, to make breakout rooms for us. Is it was in our introduction piece, and I didn't bring it up last time, or we might not have had time to go into it deeply, is this diagnostic decision-making tree from Literacy How. I'm going to grab this link because it takes us down into, okay, do my kids need phonemic awareness? Oh, Nina, you are here asking about group size. Usually like about 4-ish in a group. And then there was another decision-making tree that I came up to recently, and I'm not seeing it, but I will add it in here while you're in your groups. But you'll notice what she says is, I'll pull it up for us, is that at the top, our reading comprehension is the goal. And if they're not doing well in here, then we're going to break down, we're going to look, this is their decision-making tree, and go all the way down to where we're talking here is, how's their phonemic awareness? And this, are my kids able to delete and manipulate and play with sounds? And that's is where we are today, because this is the foundation on which all those other skills are built. And so I actually can take us to real quickly the slide that I introduced this last time, because we might not have had a chance to take a look at it, where assessment and instruction, here it is. I take her drilling down image, as you see here. We started with the reading comprehension. We drilled down to what is the weakness. But then I created this one on the right where to illustrate, this is the instruction. We start with that phonemic awareness, make sure that that's solid, and we add on my ability to translate those sounds into the individual letters, to build our decoding, build our fluency, build our vocabulary, of course, comes along the way, all along, and with our goal being the reading comprehension. So I hope that will help and add another layer to your conversations. The prompt I have for our conversation is to think about phonological processing. Whoops, I didn't go far enough, sorry. This is this one? No, I went too far. Here we go, pause and reflect. Is to take a moment to think about the different components of phonological processing and to just kind of verbalize to internalize, process this. And then we're going to get into how this is important for both reading and remembering words. And then we're going to get into the granular pieces of what those phonemes are. So I'm going to pause us on our recording and invite some groups to share out something that you had a conversation about, any questions that arose or thoughts that you, looks like Kelly and Ryan, you guys got cut off. Is there something you would like to continue sharing and share out with the whole group? And I'll go to go ahead.
No, I'm fine.
Oh, that's right. You're driving. You be careful. All right, who would like to share out, and I'll check our Jamboard in the meantime.
This is Allison. I was in room 1, and we had a lab teacher, some special education teachers at the high school level. I am a deaf educator, and then we also had a para in our group. And one of the things that we were really talking about is just the time that's needed to be able to address these skills at the points that they need to be addressed, so that we can be able to sequentially move up and broaden the skills and have them all relate to each other, especially when you've got hearing loss and different hearing levels in your classroom. One of the things I was also saying is that I really appreciate what you were talking about with phonological processing not being something that you can just do with your eyes closed, just because the visual component helps so much.
It's very crucial. Thank you. And And there have been studies on how it is hard for people who have had hearing loss to learn to read. It's actually harder than those who have vision loss. And this really kind of augments the fact that reading is an auditory skill as much as or more than it is a visual skill. So thank you for that, Allison. We see a couple people adding in as well, not having enough time to work with our students. I definitely, I agree. Theora says special education would be nice if we could do it after school so that they aren't missing anything. I love that. How about one more group? Or two, if there are a couple other people who want to share.
I'll share out. We talked about the fact that kids are coming to school speech with so many speech issues that being able to work on blends, particularly one of our teachers has first graders in our group, and she was talking about how they cannot pull apart those blends because they can't say the word right. So that's a biggie.
That reminds me, I didn't go get my pipe cleaner, but for the beads, but you can imagine a pipe cleaner where you slide the beads on the different sides. And I have a bookmark here with it too. With as many, so it's not the pipe cleaner, but somebody made me a bookmark once with these beads to be thinking about the different sounds and words. But you're right, Saxon, it's like pulling those apart. Those blends are very hard because you say each one, but they switch together so well. It's like you got to pull them apart like Velcro. All right, so let's get into that. What are the important pieces of it? So I'm going to direct us to a handout so you can print this up and bring it back next time, because this is one part of a two-part table where, and obviously I can see Ryan, and if there's anybody else driving, you'll have to print it up later, but I'll show you how to access it. When we're talking about what are the different levels of phonological awareness, and some people have actually called the advanced phonemic proficiency. So if we want to change that word, instead of advanced phonological awareness, we call this phonemic proficiency. This is my ability to do things with those sounds instead of just squish them together to make a word or pull them apart. Like Saxon was saying, her students might struggle pulling apart those consonant blends in a phoneme, in a word. That the advanced level or the proficient level is that you're going to manipulate them and change them. And so these top ones, the early, this is rhyming, alliteration, syllables, playing with those first sounds. These are your early skills, and those are necessary for developing your letter sound knowledge. But the next one, blending, obviously that's for reading, and segmenting, it's for spelling. And those skills really are generally mastered by the end of first grade. They're really instrumental in phonic decoding, reading, and early spelling. But then this phonemic proficiency is essential for a process that we call orthographic mapping. This is how we can recognize a word on sight. We can automatic recognition of words instead of having to sound them out. So that's called the phonemic proficiency, which allows us to do that orthographic mapping piece. And I'm going to do a quick poll on orthographic mapping and see who is ever, get a feel for this group's comfort level and familiarity with that term. So Ryan, I don't know if you can see the poll while you're driving, so don't be careful that the prompts are, you've never heard of it, you've heard of the term, but you're not sure what it means. I have a vague idea of the concept, don't ask me to explain it, or I'm comfortable with the term, but I could always learn more. So I'll give you a moment with that and I'll grab the pipe cleaners. Okay, 22. Here we go. Uh-oh. That pipe cleaner only has 3 beats. I need more than 3 beats. There we go. Pipe cleaners with beads. And we made 3% on that. See, perfect. I'm going to end the poll and share the results. We have a really heterogeneous group, so we will get into orthographic mapping. I'm going to have to look at my slides and see if it's today or next week, but little teaser then. That this is the process by which we remember words, and it really requires that we understand the sounds inside and out on those words. That requires the phonemic proficiency. So did I stop share? Nina, did I stop sharing the poll?
I believe so.
Okay, there we go.
No, okay, there you go.
So now I'm going to show you how to get to this handout so you can have this as a takeaway. We're going to go back to our other great, our explicit literacy instruction Google Doc here. And remember up at the top, we have our handouts, tinyurl.com, explicit literacy, dyslexia 101 handouts. I'll copy that URL, I'll put it into the chat box for you. These are all shareable. Somebody was asking earlier, can we share this doc? Yes, everything here is shareable. And Nina, I'll have to add you on to my list of people who've been co-teachers. If you are welcome, if you are opening for people to email you and contact you for more. So up here at the top, we have our handouts. When you click that, it opens to a folder. Oh, that's not mine. This is mine. These ADA compliant handouts. And because if you'll notice that this was from David Kilpatrick, we're going to find the Kilpatrick table. So we're going to scroll down. It's not in any order, or Kilpatrick chart. My apologies. And you'll look at this and you'll see we have phonological development on the left, and then the reading development on the right. So that'll be a takeaway for you. So you can keep that in terms and write on it. I also want to show you another takeaway that comes from Margie Gillis, who made that decision-making tree. She had a nice way that I really like of looking at the progression of phonological awareness of that launching off from that oral language. So remember how we said that's our foundation. And notice how she's got that beginning, paying attention to individual words, recognizing rhyme, paying attention to individual syllables, drawing upon awareness of individual first sounds, the alliterative language, onset and rhymes. Then I'm paying attention to the initial, the final, the medial, to my full phoneme awareness. This is another way of looking at it. So 2 and 3 are kind of like David Kilpatrick's early phonemic awareness. And the 1 is your basic and advanced, with blending being the easiest, segmenting being the next hardest, and manipulating being the most difficult one, which this goes kind of along the same way. Initial is easier. Your final sound is the next, the medial difficulty. And those vowel sounds are the hardest ones for our kids. So I'll put this link into the chat box for you as well. Okay, so, and then I have another way of looking at it. I like to provide lots of options so people can see from different perspectives. So starting with the rhyming sounds, going to compound words, syllable segmentation and blending, pulling them apart, putting them back together, doing the same thing with your onset and rhymes. And then we have those individual phonemes at the top. We're going to have an exercise. So I need a volunteer to be and help demonstrate these layers of difficulty. So this is now we're in the third part at the top when we're talking about individual sounds. Can I get someone or 1 or 2 people to unmute? And I'm going to actually give you these words to manipulate. So for example, by manipulating the first one, I mean to delete or substitute. So I'm going to give you a word and I'm going to tell you how to manipulate it. And you're going to give me the new word. Can I have a volunteer?
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Theora. So for this number 1, your first word is trim. I'd like you to say it without t.
Rim.
Your second word, blue, change the b to g.
Glue.
Excellent. Notice we had a deletion and then we had a substitution. I'll get my highlighter here. Now we're working on the ending sound. That was the first sound. Now we're going to work on the ending sound. The word cart without t.
Cur.
I think I heard, say it again.
I heard you say Kurt and without the cur.
See, this is what I meant was cart.
Cart. Car.
There you go. Grasp without the last sound.
Grass.
Excellent. We're going to now substitute a vowel sound. Dad, but change the a to I.
Did.
Not change the a to e.
net,
Excellent. Now we're going to manipulate the second sound in an initial blend. Say the word plan without the O.
pan,
Excellent. Say the word bake without, oh, sorry, that was a mistake there. Say the word fly, but change the O to R.
fry,
Excellent. I'll do one more of those. Say the word spill, but change the P to K.
can you repeat that? I didn't
Mhm.
hear a word with a P.
Your word was spill,
Okay,
like to spill your coffee. And you're going to change the P to K.
skill,
Excellent. The one that I accidentally gave you bake, which should have been break without R to make it bake. All right. Substituting the ending sound. Your word is seed. And I want you to change the D to T.
seat,
Excellent. Worm. Change the to N.
worm,
Warm, like
worn,
the
okay,
opposite.
worn,
There you go. And then one more tricky one here. Say force, but change the S to K.
course,
Say force,
force,
change the S to,
oh, fork,
there you go. Excellent. And for my my students are struggling with this, I might use my pipe cleaners. I might even use my fingers. So you would say or, and you're going to change that S to a K. All right. And lastly, we're manipulating the second to last sound in an ending blend, getting harder. Take out the S from coast.
coat,
Excellent. Say the word lift, but change the F to S.
list,
And one last one, say the word paint, but change the N to S.
paste,
Excellent. Everyone give her a round of applause. You did a great job. I'm seeing some things come into the chat. We're talking about other words. Yes, these exercises. So Mrs. McGibbon, these ones actually came from David Kilpatrick's book, Equipped for Reading Success. Somebody was saying that Haggerty does these as well. It is very much like Haggerty Phonic, but this one is just 1 minute exercises versus an entire activity, which I think the Haggerty is more longer. These are just one quick little things for you. All right, now everyone's going to get a chance to practice. I have one of these as a poll, then the second one, and the first one is just I'll label them A or B. So you could, if you can't annotate, you can either put a stamp on, which is anonymous, or you can put an A or a B into the chat box. The question here is, which is more difficult to do? Which demonstrates a more advanced skill? I should make me qualify advanced phonological skill. Remember phonological pieces, which is harder. And someone asked for the book title. Yes, that is Equipped for Reading Success. It's a text and a test and those 1 minute exercises. I'm seeing lots of B's and a few A's. It's always fun to do this. Now, which one is a harder skill to do? So who would like to unmute and talk through your process? And I promise I will be supportive.
So between A and B, sled doesn't have, each letter makes its own sound, but in shed, you have a digraph of SH where 2 letters make a new sound. So I would say that's harder.
If I were reading, Debbie, I would agree, but close your eyes and say sled and pull off the first sound. Now close your eyes and say shed and pull off the first sound. Do you still agree?
I was thinking you were dealing with reading. I'm sorry.
That's exactly what I tried to illustrate, that we are talking about phonemes and sounds. Now, do you agree though? I think if I pull apart sled, how many
Yes,
sounds do I
just-
have?
Yeah, you have
Go
4
ahead.
sounds in sled and 3 in shed. Yes, I see.
And
Thank you.
and how many sounds do you have before the vowel in shed? You have just one, sh, eh. Versus in sled, you have sol, eh, and you've got to pull apart that sol blend. Remember, we talked about consonant blends being really difficult. Okay, now I'm going to put the poll up for everyone. I can see some people putting stars up already. So let me go to phonemic awareness. Here we go. Which list shows a systematic sequence in counting sounds in words from the easiest to the complex? Again, remember, sounds in words are your key question here, key piece here. I'll give you a moment to answer your and for those of you who are not able to access the poll, option D is, I don't know. That's totally not open or welcome. Feel free to do that as well. I'll add that on here. D is not really sure. All right, I'm seeing everything as usual. Seeing a few A's in the chat box. We're seeing a C. We're seeing on we're seeing a B again. I love the exploration that we got here. And for those of you who are doing it on the poll, I'll go ahead and stop it. We have 69% of you, pretty high number, 71. All right, looks like the majority are saying B, hop, shop, shops. So is there somebody who would like to talk through that, like Debbie did? Or somebody would like to say, our smallest number, we could start with the smallest. If you say C, we have, then the next is A, who would like to talk through?
I'll mention, I chose A. Ape has 2 phonemes, lake has 3, and break has 4. So I think that gets progressively harder.
You've got it, Kelly.
Okay.
You're right.
Yay. How do I win?
Ache. I could bring you a book next time I come down. You are exactly right. Now, for those of you who said B, I can totally get it because here you've got 3 letters, 4 letters, and 5 letters. But when I talk about up, it's only 3. Sh, up, it's also 3. So this one's a 3, 3, sh, up, 4. And this one's t, o, b, o, and full oat 4. Okay, does that making sense for everyone? Now, now that we've gone through it, we've got woohoo, yes. Okay, this is something that we think about the difficulties. I'm going to give you a little bit of a pause to stand and stretch. And then when we come back, we're going to look at those English phonemes. So I'm going to put this up for us to, I do have an attendance sign-in reminder. I'm going to pause the recording. We'll go to a full 4 minutes. I see it's 4:41. We might want to do this small group with this large of people. And we've got quite a good range of people. And that way we don't have some people dominating. So what I'm going to do is Nina's going to make smaller groups this time. And I'm going to show you how to access the Jamboard so that you can start playing around with these different sounds and figuring out how they're made. So we're going to start with the consonants. We'll do the vowels together, but I'm going to put you into small groups to do the consonants. So we're going to focus on the 25 consonant sounds. We're going to focus on how they're made. Remember the articulatory gestures. And we're going to think about how the airflow is obstructed by either the lips, the teeth, and the tongue, or whether it's exiting the mouth or the nose. So we're thinking about the how and the where. So this is what you're going to be seeing on the next slide on the Jamboard. It's also on the Jamboard. And we're going to be filling in this chart. Now, your Jamboard 1 might have some different terms, but I'm going to do a little bit of explaining before you go in. So this first term here, our stopper, this is where my lips or my nose or my tongue is stopping the air in some way. Nose wouldn't be a fair one because the nose ones don't stop. So that's obviously not a noser because the nosers are here. The nosers are where those ones would be easiest one to start with. The airflow is actually going through the nose. You cannot make these sounds with your nose plugged. Little key there. The friction makers, you'll feel a vibration somewhere in your mouth when you make these. And notice how there is a voiced version and there's a voiceless version of these ones. That's why I say we have 3 pairs, 4 pairs, and 2 pair, and a pair of combiners is a friction maker that also stops. So it combines these two. Liquids, it's just the air kind of flows around your tongue in a weird way, and the gliders as well. Those are the harder ones. So I'm going to take us to the Jamboard so that you can see that when you're in a small group, you can make a Jamboard of your own group instead of everyone using the same Jamboard for this. So let me grab my mouse, my Jamboard over here. We'll put that back in, make sure everybody has an access. And as we know, because we have over 70 people, we can't all be in at the same time, but that's why we ask you to have one person per group sharing the Jamboard with everyone else. And so I'm going to make sure that our share is multiple participants can share simultaneously. Okay, so that's how you get to the Jamboard. And come on, link copied. I want to go to the next frame. Here we go. Here's where you see what we just showed you, and I have all the different sounds. And now these are the kid-friendly words here. If you want the more advanced linguistic words, you can see we have stops, fricative, affricate, glide, and then we have this is the manner of articulation, and this is the place of articulation. I will be showing you both of those filled out. You can choose whichever one you want to tackle as a group, the more kid-friendly version or the more linguistics difficult one. So the way you can make your own copy, one copy per group, notice right here next to the share button, you'll see 3 vertical dots. You're going to click that and you're going to make a copy. And that way you have your own copy, it'll be saved somewhere that you can work with. Okay, so you're going to be sliding these sounds. Again, we're just talking about the consonants. And Nina, if we go to maybe 3 or 4 people per group, and I think we could give them 5 or 6 minutes for this. Will that be enough? If you don't have it done, at least see what you can finish in that amount of time, and we'll go over them as a whole group when you come back. So I'm recording. And rather than go off of this one, I'm going to go ahead and pull this up, and we'll let you check your own work. How do we do? So I like to start with the nosers because those are the easiest ones, but that's not how I do it in this order. So let's see. The nosers, the and the and the So the reason why I'm going to put this in this order is for a reason here. So you can check your own. Because is our bilabials. It's made with our 2 lips. So just like the p is a bilabial and the b is a bilabial. So I'm going to put these together because I go and b all in the same way.
The P is voiceless.
Which one? Thank you. Which one? That. Thank you. See, this is SLP. I appreciate the help. I may be saying it correctly, but I can't always move and say at the same time. Okay, so Jen, you should get in here and help me out too. The k, yes, is with our g, but that's back in the back of my throat with my So let's put them back here. Which one? There's quiet, voiceless, and my g together, and then d, 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 and where is it? Oh, t, t, t. And our v. Oh, that's not stopping, is it? That's got some vibration. Z has some vibrations. Has some vibration. Has some vibration. There we go. Now, j, j. Notice I'm vibrating and I stopped. So that's going to come over here as a combiner. Along with, let's throw that one over here. J, j. That's a vocalized ch, ch, ch. That's our quiet. That's our quiet. And we have our liquids and our gliders back in the back. And our zh. I got something's wrong here. Shh. We've got shh. Is a quiet. is the voice. So I'm not putting these in the manual of articulation. Well, I will pull those up because rather than remembering all those, let's put them up here. We have, notice I've got the and z. I'll pull them all up here for us and our gliders. And I'm going to pull up here. Our next one is our manner of articulation. So if you want to take a picture of this, this is how they are made. These are the linguistics terms, the VL for the voiceless and the V for the voiced. Or if you would prefer, some teachers will say that these are the quiets, are voiceless, or some people call these the whisper sounds. And these ones are our noisy sounds, or our I can't think of another term for that. You know, these are our noisy brothers. And so these are the ones made with the lips. Notice the p, and the d, t, and the back here in the back. G, k. And we have here another pair of our fricatives that have vibration, and our z and the z. And a lot of people say, wait a minute, what's that? Zh? Well, think about genre, treasure, measure. That zh is actually quite I'm trying to see what's in the notes. There we go. Okay, a couple things I want to point out though, looking at this, because this is how we can help understand our kids' mistakes. Is that think about when your kids say pumpkin, and maybe they will say pumpkin, or they'll spell it without the p or the b, and that's, look at how it's made all the same way. The same thing if you have pond and they miss something on that, the kids are saying that it's made the same way. So that and the those are called continuants. I can stretch them, but those stops I can't stretch. So I can go and pum, but I have the p is where I stop it. So these are all made in a similar way. This is back in the back of the mouth. The question is, am I stretching it or am I stopping it? And if I'm stopping it, is there a vocalization to it? So another mistake, those are very common mistakes with kids. They also might mix and have some issues with these pairs and getting the wrong one. Jen, I would love to hear some of your thoughts too on what are some of the mistakes. Why are liquids called liquids? I think it's because it's, like I said, the air is kind of flowing around the tongue in that way. Jen, you might have a better explanation on that.
Yeah, and the F and the TH it's a typical substitution, just developmentally, and it can be until like 8 years old. So that's the interesting part, is that they're learning those digraphs before some of them are ready to make that distinction just in normal development. So that's one thing that's, can kind of be tricky.
Thank you. Another piece that I learned from an SLP that I think is really highlighting and illustrative for us about that co-articulation we talked about. Remember the train, like choo-choo train? Well, let me take a look at that ch sound. And linguistically, it is actually a really quick version of the t and the sh smushed together really fast. So hence, no wonder your kids, especially if they go the t and the it slides and becomes ch, the train. I'm looking at that t and the and it goes, oh yeah, train, because my mouth is me saying that. That sh is a really fast t, sorry, the ch is a very fast sh. I'm going to clear that off there. Just like this is another thing that was interesting for me when I was in Morocco, that j sound is a very fast d and j together. So then when I was wearing a jalaba, you say, how on earth do you spell jalaba? Good question. Is that we often would spell it with the DJ, but could you just spell it with the J? Yeah. And people did. That jalaba was a weird feeling for us, because we'd say jump is jalaba, jump. It is still that j sound. And but this also that ch explains here that ch, why some of our kids say, well, I hear it in match. Well, do you? They've slowed down. Some of them feel like they do, but the ch in match is the same as the ch in chair, depending on how you say it. And so there's a lot of complexity here that goes with ours. Is there a way to print this and do an activity with my students? Nina, you want to talk to that, because you said you did some of this with your high schoolers.
Yes, so in small groups, we would utilize this with my students. So Whether
I
it
said middle
is,
schoolers.
I'm sorry.
Did I misspeak and say high school? I meant middle schoolers.
Oh, well, middle school and high school. So I've done that with all of the students that I've worked with. I've always worked with intensive reading classes. And so I've always broken my students up. And I had classes of 24 to 30, but I broke them up into groups of 3. And in a small group of 6 to 8 students, I might do this activity or this type of work with them. And so doing it in a small group and using words that are more at their grade level, but just pulling out the opportunity for them to practice these pieces is exactly a way to take this activity and move it up to your secondary grade levels as well. So you
Thanks,
would
Nina.
use stop and nasal, but you would then obviously use words like fricative and affricative. So those are all things that you would want to make sure you use with your students. So.
And maybe you'd be using these terms instead. These are Nancy Young, who did that ladder of reading we saw next time. And she uses those words stoppers, nosers, friction makers instead of those affricates. There's also another researcher or instructor I saw who called these brothers. Those made with the lips, those made with the tongue, those made with the air going through. So you've got your lips are your quiet or noisies. And I saw something in the chat box. People were talking about you put your fingers on your throat to feel the difference between p, b, p, b. You notice the only difference, the manner of articulation is the same. The only difference is whether or not your vocal cords are engaged in that p, b, and the f, v. The same thing with your tongue. T, k, and s. Those are all working with your tongue somewhere, the t in the front, the f between your teeth, and the k back in the back. You have your quiets and your noises, and then the airflow. Shh, shh. So they're going in the airflow in that same way. So she talks about these being brothers because you've got a quiet and noisy pair. Then she also then teaches these as cousins. And I like this too, how they're related. Your nose, your nasals that you can't make with your nose plugged. If you try, I love that. You just can't because your air is exiting out your nose. And then you have your liquids, your ol and r, where those are related and how they're made. And then the airflow, the harder ones where some dialects there really isn't a difference between wagon and wheel, and some there is a stronger difference. Okay, now let's do the vowels whole group question. I know you can easily put into the chat box the 5 short vowels. What about the long vowels? Notice how we have 6. What about the other vowels? I actually have this in the vowel valley here, but I'll put them up as we come up with them. So go ahead and put something in the chat box. Tell me what are the short vowels? Okay, no one's putting in the chat box. All right, I'll start typing them in. Okay, and then our long vowel sounds A, E, I, O, and U, and that U. There we go. And we've got some others. I'm going to go ahead and put up our vowel valley to talk about this, so we can all talk about them together. Notice how we have sometimes Y, but not as a vowel sound. So I see a couple of people putting that Y in there. Now, when you're talking about letters, yes, I completely agree. And I would add in the W as well, because like O-W, E-W, A-W. But in this case, when I'm talking about the sound, the Y and the I are fairly interchangeable. We broached this last week. We'll talk about it a lot more next week. But that Y is going to make the Y sound, so will the I. But it could make, as I see now, Jay Lane putting in the I like in my, the E like in many, and the I like in Jim. So it making that I or I or E sounds. So the E, I'm going to highlight these in different colors to draw our attention to the long and the short sounds. The shorts, I'm going to make the blue here. The I, the E, the A, the and like in book. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I put 5, but really I'm calling the short here, but it's an other. So hence it's not one of our typical when we talk about the 5. When we're talking about the long, though, E, now notice the reason why this is called the vowel valley is what my mouth is doing with this E. And notice that now go I, a, I, my jaw is dropping. Then I go back up to the O, oo, and U up at the top. So here are our long ones, A, I, O. That's an other I should use of the different color, and our long ones here. We have the schwa up at the top. That's our unstressed version of our vowel sounds. We have our I and our oi and our ow. Some people call those diphthongs. Technically, they are diphthongs, but technically so is I, and so is E. You know, we're not going to get into the diphthongs because that's just more complicated than I think our kids need to understand. But oi is a French influence, and the ow is probably French influence too. You'll know, learn from that. A lot of our crazy spellings are coming from French, and some of those sounds. French is my second language, so I say it with all affection, but that oi is a French, and the ow and the or. We have our ers and our r's and our ors here as well. That is our R controlled or our influence. I'm going to give you this link that you see here at the bottom because I think it's really useful for practicing and understanding and helping our students with understanding both the consonants and the vowels. And I'm going to put it in here into the chat box for you and bring it up so that you can see how to use it. How are we doing? Oh, we're going to have time to do the last practice in a small breakout room again, Nina, too, in just a moment, which is great. Okay, so I just put into the chat box for you this link. And what I love about this is, and let me make sure I'm sharing with sound so you can hear it as well. Good, I am. That it illustrates, notice how it's not using letters, because there are many different ways we could write these different sounds. And we have our partners. So we have the p and b and t and d and k and g, our brothers, if you want to call them. And I'm going to illustrate one of them so you can hear.
Car. You hear k at the beginning of car. K is a whisper sound. Say k, not ka, k, car.
Now they don't get into the why on why we need to make sure that we are saying k, not ka. But later on, when you're talking about spelling and blending, you need those clear sounds. It'll be much easier for your kids. And so we have here our back here our t-d, these are our stops. We have our nasals here, and then we have some of our affricates here, our fricatives, our and sorry, this is sh, and this is, and then we have j, like in measure, being the opposite of sh. And then we have, you can see we even have our ch and a j. So we have all of our consonants on this side. We have our long vowels here. Notice what for the oo, we have two, because we have u like in cube and oo like in tube. We have o, I, e, and a, ape. And then our short vowels, I, and as well as our other vowels, like in book. We have o, oi, and ow. And then the syllabic vowels we'll get into and talk more about when we talk about syllables. We have the and the ul, like in bottle or owl. That becomes a difficult one with syllables as well. Okay, I have two practices for us to do, and I'm not sure if they're both in the Jamboard. Let me take a quick look. I don't think they are. So I think what I'll do is I will share this into the chat box for you instead. Actually, I do have one of them there. So one of them is here, and this is a this one is a how many sounds. So I'm going to put up into our as we go into our breakout rooms for you to do some practice. Careful on this how many sounds. I think we have a couple minutes to do this. Do we have to do this whole group, or do we have time to go in a small group, Nina?
We have time to go to small group, I think.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna share screen with this one, and because this one won't take you very long, but I want you to think about where are the tricky ones on finding the first sound. I'm going to add in one more tricky one because of the way I hear it so often. Whoops, not that one. Go back. That wasn't my add in text option here. What's the first sound in this one? And I think that's the only one I wanted to add in. I'll let you add others if you want to add in as well. So we're going to go into breakout rooms where you'll talk about what's the first sound. That's what we have here. And on the next one in your Jamboard, you'll see a practice of how many sounds are in this word. So that's what you see here on frame 6 of our Jamboard. We can go ahead and stay with the same breakout groups if you want, Nina, and give them just maybe 4 minutes to grab as many as they can to practice and to explore. And I'll share this while they're in, and then they can go from this one to the other one as well. All right, so pausing recording. Any things that you wanted to talk about? There are definitely some tricky ones that I want to draw attention to, but let's hear from you first. What are your thoughts?
Well, if you were a student who was trying to spell these, let alone say them, several of them don't say the sound that they correspond with, like chorus is a CH, but it has a K sound. Symbol starts with a C, but it has an S sound to it. Things like that. That's what we talked about. Pharaoh, unless you know that PH makes an F sound, you wouldn't know that how to read that. You would be breaking that apart, trying to go
That's definitely. Deborah, thank you for the feedback. Not enough time. I'll make sure we have more time next time. It's always a balance between how much we do and how much small group. I used to do this one whole group, but with so many of you, I wanted to put you into small groups. Genre is tricky. Yes, that zh sound, like in measure, that genre is a tricky one. You've brought up the visual aspect, Jen. Thank you. Yes. Yesterday being weird because that yesterday. Also, do you notice that same in yesterday is the same as in unicorn? They both start with that y sound. So the U is technically a diphthong as well, because you have that y that you do in yesterday is the same as in you. You brought up the k in chorus. Did anyone talk about this one? What is the first sound in that? I'd love for someone to unmute and help us with that one. That first sound? What was that? Brenda's got it. It's a k in quiet, because how many sounds? I'm going to my pipe cleaner. I had a pipe cleaner. There it is. In quiet, I have ooh, I, at. That ooh is 2 different sounds. We usually teach it as 1, but it really is 2, isn't it? Okay, we have to be careful with that one. What else was tricky?
We were having a fun discussion about the word genre, because the G isn't necessarily a soft G, and it's definitely not a hard G. But what sound is?
It's a French G.
It was like, okay, we're just going to zhuzh our way through this.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Did anyone talk about what's the first sound in that word?
Well, that was our discussion point, is what is the sound? It sounds like zhuzh, and we're like, well, what combination of letters is that? Is like a G, Z? We didn't know.
So in Bosnian, they have a letter like this for zh, like, and so this one, I cannot write and do this at the same time. This is ch, and this is sh, and this is zh. And we write it with a ZH, it's easier cursive, but we write it with a G, like in genre. We write it like in measure, it's an S, like in measure, and treasure, or sure, because that's an SU, that's not the zh, but you're right, that zh sound is a weird one. Thank you, Nina. Go ahead, you take care. But did anybody talk about what's the first sound in the word that I put up here that I'm not one to say, because there depends on how you say it. Anybody talk about that one?
Tomorrow.
And how did you say it, Jen?
Tomorrow.
You actually say tomorrow naturally?
Yes.
Because I hear on the radio all the time, and I think about my natural speech. Most people say, I'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, no, I don't say that. Say, I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay. How many people though say, I'll see you tomorrow? I hear it on the radio all the time. On tomorrow's recipe, it becomes more of a d, doesn't it? We're sliding that t. So hence my question though, is it tomorrow for everyone, or is it tomorrow? Is it a d sound? So I think that again, it depends on how you say it. And that's where we have to be really careful with our kids about how they say things. And this is where they have to, this is something I'm going to talk about a lot more next week. This is where we help them see the imperfect relationship between speech and print. That they may say tomorrow, they may say butter, but we spell tomorrow butter. That's again that imperfect relationship between speech and print.
And it's more common. It's more common in the middle of the word, and it's actually called a flap, and it's in between a T and a D. So like butter. Yeah, but it's mostly in the middle if it's in the middle.
But I hear it on the radio all the time. So okay, we'll see you tomorrow. And it becomes more of a d sound, doesn't it? It's not a clear t. I don't hear see you tomorrow. So it's the how do we say it when we're saying it very clearly, and how do we say it when we're saying it naturally in common speech? All right, anything weird here? How many sounds? I'll point out some that I want to draw our attention to. Let's definitely talk about this one. This one might be a good one to talk about. The errors and the ors, or those just are hard. I'll own that one. Any conversation that you had on this one when you looked at that?
We didn't have time to get to that one.
Thank you, Deborah. So why don't we talk about some of these together, especially this one, and how many sounds and flex? Who wants to do that for us? Let's see, Alessandra.
Are you talking sounds for each letter, or are you talking syllables? Like,
We're just how many sounds in the word? So I see Alessandra pulling them off.
Yeah.
What are they?
I think flex. O-X. I think 4.
Oh, see that last one again? You went
O-X. Flex.
Do you feel that k is actually two sounds?
No, the flex.
Uh-huh. That's two sounds. Oh,
Flex.
You feel that you're doing a k.
Because I'm dividing the consonant cluster. So because I hear two sounds in full, O, X, and for me, X is the X.
Yes. But
Oh, at the beginning, I do feel the K.
No,
yes.
do you feel it? Yes.
I feel the K at the
I
beginning.
got you there.
Yes. Flex.
Yes. So this is why we have tax and tax sound the same. Is because the x is those two sounds.
Flex.
Unless the X is at the beginning, in which case it represents Z, like in xenophone or Xerox. If the X is at the end, it's going to make two sounds, like in flex. It makes the X, or it's going to make, not just at the end, it could be in the middle. Come here. Exit or exit. It could be the eggs, two sounds, eggs or X. So it's, when I teach this, we'll talk next time, two movements, two sounds, X or X, unless it's at the beginning of the word, in which case that's pretty rare, like in xylophone. Full X, full X. So 5. Do you see that, Cherish? 5 sounds, full X, as Jen put in there. Okay, we got there, right? Anything else weird that we want to, let's do opaque, opaque. That's one's not so bad, right? Any other weird ones here that you want to talk about before we go on? It's hard to think.
Question.
Go ahead.
So how are you going to teach that to a first grader? Well, because teaching also consonant clusters, and you teach the first grader that those two sounds make the X sound. If you say that the X has two sounds,
Mhm.
right?
Exactly like that. Yes. That
Mhm.
when I see this X, it's going to be the sounds. Do you see it? Feel
So-
it? You feel the and you feel the.
So that
Mhm.
you have to teach them that they will feel two sounds, but it's one letter.
Exactly. Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Mhm.
It's two sounds, but two sounds made by one letter. And this is again that imperfect relationship between speech and print, the most important thing we can teach our kids. So we will be talking a lot more next time about how we represent them in speech. And yes, first graders, the X makes X, and that's the other one Debbie puts at their end, and the QU makes Q, not the Q by itself, because the Q by itself would make K, like here we have an opaque. But the usual, most common when we have those QU together represents Q, like in queen. Go ahead, Alessandra.
I thought it was qua.
You want to be careful because it's not a queen, it's a queen.
I know, qua.
It's
Cool.
hard to pull off that It's cool, like a queen. Say
So I
queen with
So
it's hard to
qua. Is it qua?
cool.
Cool.
That how would you make like
Queen.
for example wick without the ick?
Quarter. Quarter.
Exactly.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Quarter.
I have a
It's tricky.
question. Can I interrupt you? Sorry.
Of course. One last. I'll put this up.
I watched the video that you sent us, one of the videos, and for the R, it said R. And here, some of the teachers say R for the R, and I say
So you want to be careful with because is actually a vowel sound that is spelled with an ER or the IR or the UR. That's your You want, and the
No.
is.
I'm talking about the letter sound, the R.
I know.
When they're
When
going
the
over
letters-
the alphabet.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying too. The R does not represent If I want my kids to spell they're going to write it with an ER or the IR or the UR. If I want them to make this, I'm going to tell them that their sound is R, like in rug or ramp or ridiculous. It's a R sound. Think of like a car.
Yeah. No, but when you're teaching the alphabet and a teacher says, okay, the sound of the letter R is R. They don't say
Not You want to try and take off that It's a like in rug.
Ring.
Like a exactly.
But why do teachers say R?
Well, it's same the reason why they say K instead of K.
Oh.
It's hard. It's hard to break that off.
Ooh.
Okay, we will get into so much more of this when we get into next week. I will just put this up for you for thinking about some of these activities that we did together. And I will invite you to add in a reflection onto the Jamboard. If you want to take a snapshot or a screenshot of this, you can do that. And then the last thing that we have is a reminder of an appreciation, a thank you, and a reminder that next week we will be together talking about these sound symbol correspondences. Do you want me to put that back up, Deborah?
Yes.
Did you get
it? Yeah, I was going to.
I always wonder whether I'm going too quickly or not. Here you go. The phoneme activities, isolating them, picking which one's the same. So that's a categorization. How do you sort them into ones that start with the same sound or end with the same sound, have the same middle sound, putting them together, pulling them apart. We've practiced the deletion and we practiced the substitution. So these are things that we can do to help make sure our students really get clear on these phonemes and the sounds before we get into the way we represent those sounds in print, which is what you were talking about, Alessandra. We'll talk about that next week. One thing I want to really caveat before we go, though, is here when we're doing the blending, it is so much easier. If you have a student who's struggling with blending, let's start with the continuance. Remember I said those ones we can hold, like the and the z. I can hold those to blend it into the next sound, like or that's not a good example. It's not a real word. It would be one. I can hold those to blend them versus those are harder, those stops. So your kids are going to find blending with continuance much more easy than the blending with stops. So I thank you for all of your great work today. You guys have been a fantastic group. I don't want to keep you past 5:30, although I have a little bit. My apologies. Again, you have a place in your Jamboard for reflection, and that you'll find on the next frame, or you can add in something to the chat box. We appreciate all of your time, and I look forward to seeing you next week. I'll go ahead and stop the recording, but I am available for a few minutes if people need or have any questions or thoughts to add on.